Hi there, Jason Dixon with Neuberger & Company for your Training Tip Tuesday. So today we're going to be talking about the fact that your customer does really need to like you. Now I know some of the advice that we hear and get and things that we read, some of the more sort of traditional sales process, a little bit more hardcore approach. We'll hear things like, your customer doesn't need to like you. You don't need to be friends with them. You just need to be able to sell the product or sell the service, right? They don't need to like you. They need to like what you do. Well, I don't know. I think we can take this too far, right? I think people that focus too much on being friendly with their customers or being friendly with their prospects have a tendency to maybe take it too easy on them when we need to get into negotiation time. Conversely, if we take that sort of traditional hardcore approach where we don't need to be friends with our clients or prospects, we just need to make sure we're selling them the right thing. I think when we get into tough conversations or if it's renewal time, that comes into play. I mean, think about a scenario where you didn't have the best relationship that you could with your client or that prospect in the sales process, and that tough thing happens. You get to a spot where you have to negotiate or get into a conversation about money, or maybe there's a delivery issue. If you don't have a good relationship with them, if they don't like you, the chances of that relationship ending well is probably pretty small, or the chance of getting that deal probably goes way down. Conversely, if you have a really good relationship, and even when that really bad thing happens, you find a way to sort of work it out. You sort through the issues or challenges, and it usually ends up okay. That's based on the relationship. So there's really two areas where this gets sideways as it relates to developing a relationship. One is where the salesperson wants to be liked more than the prospect or their client is willing to give up. They work a little too hard on it. We'll talk about that. The other is not paying attention to the communication style. So there's a lot of different areas where relationships get sideways, but these are the two areas we're going to focus on. One is if we find ourselves wanting that relationship more so than the client or the prospect, we sometimes have a tendency to be more interesting than we are interested. And if we fall on the wrong side of that line, we usually end up talking a little too much, making it a little bit more about ourselves than asking questions and learning what there is to learn and being more curious about our clients. If we make it more about us, it's never going to have the same impact on our client relationship. So, rule is, be more interested than you are interesting. The second area is understanding the communication style or not being mindful of the communication style of your prospect or client, right? Just charging right over it. I was reminded in thinking about this of Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion, The Psychology of Influence. And there was a study that was in that book where they used a group of MBA students at a school that you would know, and they ran them through a test. And the test was they took one group, and they gave them some instructions. They were sending them into a negotiation scenario, and they gave them some instructions. And the instruction was, listen, time is money, get straight to the point. And that group of students came to a favorable result about 55% of the time. So not bad, pretty good. The second group of students, though, they said, listen, before you get into the negotiation process, find some similarities or some commonalities with your prospect or with the client and talk about that before you get into the negotiation. In this case, when they kind of slowed down and calmed down and were communicating a little bit more effectively and just in a conversation with their target before they got into the negotiation, 90% of the time that negotiation landed in a favorable position. And not only that, but those negotiations landed at an 18% higher value than that of the first group. So, moral of the story here is, be more interested than you are interesting, and communicate effectively. Slow down. Don't just jump into the business. What we find is more people than not, to the tune of 40% more, would much rather get to know you as a person, get to know a little bit of what you have in common before we get right into business. So be thinking about all of these things when you get into these conversations with your clients and prospects. For more on this and to talk in a little bit more detail, maybe coach through some of those relationships that you're dealing with now, we'd love to help. Reach out to me or any of the other coaches here at Neuberger & Company. Thanks, and have a great rest of the day.